Hi. Hello, can I have your attention? Hi, everybody. We're going to start. Thank you. Thank you. Before I introduce our guests, I want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Chagwaya Vitam, the people of Chagwayanga, whose present-day ancestors are the citizens of the Fernandina Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. They have been here long before us and will be here perhaps long after we are gone. I found this map, which is really kind of remarkable, and it outlines the ancestral scope of their land, and the arrow is, you know who, it's us. So very small here, very big there. Poet Ariana Reines is a writer of psychedelic epics, most recently about climate change and the forever war, about capitalism and surveillance, about gun violence and police brutality, fascism, genocide, the diaspora, mental illness, gender, and the occult. For her, these subjects are inseparable from the signs and symbols by which, in our media-glutted moment, they are anchored down and relentlessly articulated and re-articulated. If today's world can seem incomprehensible, so too can the ways we discuss it. Last week's news, takes, memes, and trends quickly dissolve into so many ancient runes. We are lost in language. I'm quoting, quote, "We are lost in the language of images. It was growing difficult to speak." Reines writes in the poem, A Partial History, yet talk, quote, "yet talk was everywhere." Amid the chaos, she takes on, she takes on the role of reluctant oracle or interpreter, dogged by her revelations, but hesitant to accept or impose any semblance of or pretense of coherence. Not a prophet, not a Cassandra, but perhaps a kind of haruspex, an ancient word, a Roman official who interpreted omens by sacrificing the entrails of sacrificial animals. Welcome, Ariana Reines.
Thanks, Matthias. Thanks everybody for coming. I have this coffee that's going to go on, it would slide onto me, so. Okay, hi. I'm going to read to you from my new book, which is called The Rose. And I'm told that we will have some like Q&A, like conversating opportunity together too. And I have corn in my teeth, and I had corn on the cob at the cafeteria just now, and I like really wanted to get it out of my teeth before the reading, but that didn't happen. So stay, like, don't come any closer. The city was humming gently under me, like an adolescent quaffing deeply from the cup of righteousness. No, a bright bird cutting through a blue sheaf of rainwater, checkered floor, dead fronds, a bunch of Stevens shit somebody forgot was there. I'm out of practice with my own world. I was looking at how someone else saw it longer than I realized, longer than I care to admit. Those goggles left a mark on me. Then I stared at my own face. An invitation came with my face to melancholy while nature purred at the edges of my perception. And before me lay a broad road enjoining me to do of myself and make of myself according to the American tradition. Secretly, I felt and knew things I had not perceived my body turning into secrets. In other words, I did not notice the mechanism by which something within me noted my experiences and apprehensions of the truth would not be met with favor if I spoke them. Which is not to say one speaks only to find favor, only that the threat of censure has a boring way of haunting the cells, pulling them somehow down, like the countenance of Cain, which fell one day and never rose again. And the fall of his face rhymed with the fall out of Eden, leading to the first murder and the invention of cities where we now find ourselves, each tower the ghost of a farmer who failed to meet the favor of the Lord. So, let's see. Forgive me, my files are disorganized. Just bear with me, please. Forgive me, forgive me. Yay. Sorry, guys. Okay, the rose. After coming, he told me that when he comes with me, it starts before it has started and goes on long after it finishes. Sometimes after we fuck, he's delirious and says childlike phrases that almost rhyme and approach poetic sense. His head seems to pivot on its axis, and twitching, he loses consciousness. I could feel him hesitating to finish a compliment I wanted to receive in words, an energy I wanted to force him to force through language. You are going to give me this compliment directly, I said, and I steadied myself to receive his words, distinguishing me from every other woman he had ever known. Last night I told him I couldn't tell if he was a combination of highly intelligent and slightly retarded, or if he was simply kind of dumb, but that I had decided it was the former, since that way of seeing him gave me intense pleasure, a sexual genius with a highly erogenous void floating like a cloud of idiocy at the center of an otherwise powerful mind. It may be that I suffer because I use men as muses, and because the thought of my muse's stupidity excites me. But such but such men are privileged because I give them my stupidity. I preserve my stupidity for them, and I fuck them like a mindless animal. We were moving slowly toward the city. I could smell my friend's popcorn flavored with whey. We were talking about the play we'd just seen, the first play anyone had seen for a long time. As we moved over the water toward the city, glowing with golden lights everywhere, something grave and strong, small and not needing to make a sound, made itself known to me. Something inside me made itself known to me. Having been moored while beside the Statue of Liberty, wondering, was my nose about to bleed, I thought, I am moving away from this. We are moving away from here. I can't fit what I mean into a conversation, at least not as we used to know them, and though no one would forbid me anything, I thought, we are moving away from this. Beauty, red light, charming people, and all we sacrificed to give each other this. Why did we sacrifice so much to give each other this? I forget. Give it to the world, I thought. How could I forget? I always wanted to give my heart to the world. Edges of a familiar dismay moved through my face as I moved through New York City. PMS descended, a weight that is a cousin to gravity, or it's familiar, but not gravity itself. Last night, he saw a bunny. The light was dappled and ecstatic as we pulled away from the city. I didn't want to be there and tensed myself against the energy of its 8 million souls. Then slowly, I opened myself to them. He dreamed I was giving him cups, and each cup I gave him he washed. I would give my heart to the world. I have already proven my willingness to do so. Yet such a thing takes commitment, and such commitments become overfamiliar, like the most important metaphors in all of literature. Life as a dream, the woman, the rose, the blind winged boy with a bow and arrow for love, sleep standing for death, and time named sand or any river. It took me hours and days to foment those desires, and once they had ripened, I found I could do little with them. I had gotten into the habit of systematically exhausting myself and attenuating good feeling by stretching it across hours of solitude as a replacement for the mind-altering substances I no longer consumed. Needless, or perhaps not needless to say, I was also devoted to a regimen of chanting and Kundalini yoga, which had without a doubt improved both my mental state and physical looks, but my dependency for happiness, upon which I nevertheless questioned, occasionally resented, and now and again attempted to break. I knew I was a sadomasochist, but resisted yielding to this fact in any but the most controlled and diversely sublimated ways. I wanted to vomit, die, and change my life in that exact order. The patient progress of my blood, sore and filled to the lees with information, confused me. I was the idiot of the ages, their scion, their son. Did I have to resist everything? I feel like a bag of pork, a bag of trade, a meat knuckle, cold, a leg. I want to be hurt, for my swollen heart to be humiliated, or rather I expect this, dread or wanted, I can't tell the difference, or I've elided the difference on purpose. I think I get pregnant month by month. I think I get pregnant every month, and my childlessness is proof of my husband's perversity. I want to be hurt, and I organize this feeling because the age in which I live compels me to respect myself. It is my duty to do so. And even though our contemporary idea of liberation would allow me to display my own abasement in empowering terms, should I ever seek to display it, I am talking about something deep inside me, not about the story of how to show it. My longing, true and unliberated, carceral and unlimited, is a desire I do not slake. This desire has therefore become religious. Has become so by sheer force, by my refusal, almost identical to devotion, to violate with any approximation my hunger. If only I could find the right person to hurt me. But almost no one seems worthy of the privilege. I do like mediocrity in men. It arouses me when it fits properly into their smell and animal valor, undervalued in the present age. That might have made them kings in an earlier one. No form can hold me, catch me, or console me, no form but you. Chrome rain, motorcycle chrome, cut cops. I even dared to say, take care last night. You hated it. I watched you hate it with remorse and delight. Chrome book, Chrome car, Google Chrome, Chrome bike. I found a new way of passing out, you wrote. My stomach settled. My knives went slack. I've always liked helpless and terrible men because they break my mind. I see my brain splitting open, lolling open like the fleshes of oysters and crabs ripped from the shell, Aphrodite surrounded by shells, flying from the sea to heaven, Conrad says. He has something for me, a key, but dump him if I want to. I wanted an excuse not to. You are perfectly seasoned, he says, like seasoned firewood. It bursts right into flame and it smells divine. Beings of the future, with all the plastic you'll know is in me, and all the rays from other worlds streaming through my hair. How can I make you believe me when I say I sometimes felt an unnatural feeling? Electric, humming in my head and inner ear, nearly metallic, or like the static when I put on what used to be called a synthetic shirt. Death has the biggest dick of all. Probably the reason women are still attracted to the devil and will always be is that's who fucked us originally to get life onto this planet. Oh, nobody laughed. I'll just read that again. I feel like, I should have warned you that I think these poems might be a bit out of order. This book is a bit jumbled up. But at times I have felt this might be the first poem in the book. Then again, maybe it belongs in the center because in the Renaissance, they would put the most important poem in the middle, which is very unmodern thing to do. Death has the biggest dick of all. Probably the reason women are still attracted to the devil and will always be is that's who fucked us originally to get life onto this planet. Like a saint living in a window, moisturized and peeled, a small frog swells in the rain, latent, sleeping, longing that lay down, a mustard seed, germ of faith, whirling in the open space enclosed by the structure of Sarah's idea. She is immense. I sometimes think she's the first good woman, glamorous accomplishment, sex and reading, making a go of knowing yourself when it's raining, and because you always liked those dramatics. You're tempted into wishing you were dead, almost just because it happens to be something you know how to do. I heard myself in every cell the singer sang. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. When the queen ascended into view, I was with her, hiding in her darkness. When she fell from favor, I fell too. I governed myself with silence. I covered my wound in my own naked body. I said no protest words when the stranger entered me. I'll forget his face, I told myself. I closed my eyes and I did not forget it, though it was many a good thing. In spite of this, I did manage to forget. Healing potions, songs, and secret sounds. The rose with its mouth like a child's asleep. Minaret, thorn, spire, steeple, wishful flavor, exhausted people, 2 cups of blood, 1 grain of sand, receding flesh with your tooth at its hand. If I knew the words, I would bid the mother of us all be seated. As it is, I pull out a chair for my own mother to sit in. I offer her a cigarette. I light it for her in my mouth. I'll change, I thought. I'll study what the old ones did. I'll hide. I won't come out till I'm ready. I'll find another woman somewhere inside me. The stovepipe or the chimney of his leg, the stiff black gun of his body, pressing confidently against her, sensuality, dancing with her all night long, the roses and the roses of Sharon already cracking open, throat sore, the tongue's root is in there, Saraswati hisses like a snake. Some things are written with the hand, others live only in the mouth. Sorry for reading these off my phone, it's not very dignified. Just bear with me if you can. Come on. So the Rose, the Romance of the Rose was one of the first novels that we know of, at least novels as we come to understand them in Europe. I think it's like 14th century, The Romance of the Rose, and I think the rose, from what I understand, originates in Syria and Iran. And it, like many of the things that I'm interested in, is an allegory even while being itself, if that makes any sense. And I think that like it used to be a commonplace to understand the rose as an allegory for the female reproductive anatomy. But I think it's very important to also see in the rose the male asshole. And I haven't had the courage to read you the most sexual parts of the book. But basically, my pandemic romance was like, it was very exhausting and like, I guess like, I don't know if people still say problematic, but like, but it was also really interesting because, so I was having all of those masochistic yearnings like right before the romance started. Like I'm just gonna like, whatever, the room is like dark enough. I like don't really know any of you, so this is only like live streaming to like maybe 12 people.
15.
There you go. So I'm not really, I have like many people, I have like masochistic desires, but it's not my primary desire, but it just like will come up sometimes where like I really want it, but like you can't just like, that's like not that easy a desire to slake because most men have no control. And it's so funny because a lot of men think that they're dominant, but they are just narcissistic. It's not the same. And it's a completely different dynamic, like at least in my experience with like women and non-binary people. Like it's just a very different power dynamic because I don't have the same resentments. So it just doesn't have the same charge. You know what I mean? Anyway, so what was interesting about this relationship was the surrender of my partner, actually. It was I'm usually normally when men come at me with a submissive vibe, I'm just you're boring, go away. But I'm into kind of a little bit of a dickhead vibe with secret deep surrender. That's more my thing. Anyway, and so this dude had that energy, but the surrender that he had was devout. There was something quite really beautiful about it, that it restored a part of my soul. I don't know if this is making sense. So you're all yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I found myself really interested in investigating the history of romance as we understand it. Why do we think of romance being what we think of it as? And of course, the romance and the roman, the novel, all of this kind of fabulation and fiction, it has there's something in the core of it that I really wanted to uncover that has to do with pleasing women, pleasing the feminine, which used to be a virtue in the arts. In other words, as the form of the novel evolved and arose, it's a secular form, right? The idea of there being written and visual arts that weren't just church liturgical stuff. It was new, and then who was the audience for these things? Well, who was locked in the tower, basically. A lot of what we've inherited as the arts, it's been forgotten that part of what the arts were supposed to do was please women. And I just think that that's a really intriguing virtue. What if it was understood as a social virtue? Does this give pleasure to the feminine? What if that was a important question to ask? When you're evaluating your own artwork or something in the world, does this please her, my lady? Does this please my lady? You know what I mean? And so I'm just I'm so interested in that, because I didn't even think of that or reckon that as a possible virtue in my own understanding of the world. But does it really please me? And I mean please me truly, And why? And that's such a lovely and useful, judicious way of not only constructing artworks and art forms, but modes of social relating and styles of courtship. And of course, it's very important in sex, quite literally too. But I know from my investigations that a lot of what we understand as romantic or having to do with romance comes through the south of France, from the Islamic influence, with the troubadours and such, and even the notion of wanting to earn the lady's favor. There was also some really there was a lot of really bad military metaphors for sex, battering rams and penetrating the fortifications. There's some kind of, I think, a little clumsy stuff, but I'm just really interested in how that this idea that that feminine pleasure is something that you should aim for is that's an engine that also moved culture and changed culture, that feels very important to connect with at this time. Anyway. I saw two robins playing out my window. I don't know how to tell the truth to you. in light like this, white as a dish. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. The thought he won't call is the most boring idea in the world. Moving from room to room, I thought, the thought you won't call is a brain-damaging thought. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. I couldn't watch the Euripedes movie. I was sobbing from the first note in the preview. And I had so many things to tell you, but now that I'm here, I don't know how. Jolted by the sound of my housemate unclamping the door, the smell of her body, burnt hair, and spiced cooking, finches screaming, just like I remembered, finches like a mother and father from Massachusetts fighting. My brother told me my mother asked to stay the night. He said no. I said no and walked away. He texted me. A familiar blank exhaustion unfurled in the back part of me. In another part of every cell in me, the lights went out. I wanted to lie down. I wanted to go to sleep. I consoled myself with a simpler thought. He won't call, I thought, moving from room to room. I texted my brother a red heart. What more could I say? He told me he gave her more of the supplies I had sent. Adult undergarments, alcohol wipes, gloves, masks. A few days earlier, she had written me an email. I am guzzling vodka, she reported cheerfully, believing that in this way she can disinfect her throat and lungs. And I spray Lysol and wait 15 seconds before sitting down on any toilet. I don't know how to tell you these things. Report them. They're like a face that won't even fit on itself. A face like a dinner plate whose contents are sliding off. Upon the palm of a distracted waitress, 5 hours into her brunch shift, who can only think one thought. He won't call. She may yet turn out to be a poet. I am not, as they say, in a space to make earnest pronouncements about our predicament. I repress the death in me, called my mother, guzzling her vodka and spraying her Lysol. And when I go to CVS to MoneyGram her, I get hot under my mask and resentful. I hate her for having done this to me my whole life. I still remember the day she tried to sell me pantyhose. There is poverty, and there is the system. There is mass death, and there are its children. My mother was once a magnificent woman. The wind in the singer had to pass through her heart. A friend told me this morning of something bad that happened to her yesterday while she and another poet were giving a reading on Zoom. Someone showed a baby crying, and then the crying baby filled the screen. And then certain parts of a man were shown. And then he used those parts to rape that baby. This is what my friend told me she saw. This is what was shown to my friend, a poet, as she tried to read her poems on Zoom last night. Later this morning, as I thought about this poem, I wondered if what she was shown was really done live, or if the person seeking to do harm was showing a recording. Because when I mentioned what had happened to another friend in Europe, she had used the word porn, an inadequate, inaccurate word for this kind of harm. But it was my friend's use of this inadequate word that made me realize I don't know if the person really did those things, and that I felt slightly comforted thinking it had been a recording. And I did not like that this thought of it having been a recording that shattered my friend last night made me feel a little calmer. When my friend told what she told me, I began to cry. I think I'm going to vomit, I said, but I did not. We have to pray, I said. Dazed, I sat there in bed, typing words to her on Instagram. Misery, I typed, and evil, destitution and death. My father hurt me when I was little, my friend told me. He hurt me that way. I had not known that. She had the feeling she had been targeted for her feminism. You must not think this had anything to do with you, I said. This had nothing to do with you, I pleaded with her. You must not internalize it. You must not take it personally. You must not let this evil inside you. I said these things and others I perhaps should not have said. And she said other things too. Rape is an attempt to destroy the soul, I said. Even the angels did it to Eve. I said this and still other things I should not have said. I think I said that we come to this planet to fight for our soul. All souls, said my friend. All souls, I echoed. Ariana, she said, I have to go. She said she would take a bath and cook a tagine. We had commiserated on the danger of asceticism and our taste for it. We had agreed that we must continue to be kind and playful, warm and alive, and to guard against the severity of Simone Weil, and to guard against the severity of Weil's sorrow. Will you write about it? I had dared to ask. I don't know, said my friend. I let her go. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart. How can I tell you what happened? It should have been something I could face. The last time I saw my mother, it was Christmas. And even though I have seen everything, it was a degradation I simply could not see any further. I just could not see it again. I just couldn't see it. My brother has been seeing it, and I believe it has damaged him permanently. I cannot look at her. I don't know how. I cannot face her. I can no longer take her hand, not because of the virus and not because of the law, but because she forsook herself day by day and year by year for 20 years and for 30 years and breath by breath and doggedly, and now it is too late for me. Must it be? Wrote Beethoven inside his 16th string quartet. It must be, he wrote. The wind and the singer had to pass through her heart, so the singer could not betray her heart. A beggar like me could make no such sound. A liar like me could make no such sound. My biggest fear, said a friend, is that this will end before we learn our lesson. Another friend who had lived through AIDS said, no, honey, we never and will never learn our lesson. But I tried to tell him this could be different, that my life was patently better than it had been before, that I would never go back to the old ways, that I knew now how much of my soul I had given away. And I know what has become of us. And I'm a woman who left her mother to rot. And I dared to go to school as though that could wash me. I knew it could not wash me. I went because it sounded romantic. I believed that it might calm me. It did calm me. I am no saint. I'm not even a very good woman. lately happier than I have ever been, less of a liar, gentler with the brute truth, simpler in the pursuit of my errand. And I am not a great singer. I'm not even a singer at all. God attacking our lungs. I do love the birds. Okay. I guess you can ask me stuff now. Yeah.
I have a question from the chat. What are your artistic rituals, or rather, how does the active ritual and practice of worship manifest itself in your work?
Yeah, everyone loves a ritual. It's like really popular right now. I'm a meditator. I do meditate in the morning, or I try to get it in somewhere in the day. Sex is really important to me. I don't have a ritual for sex. Part of what I love about sex, I know a lot of people get very routine, or like they get really fixated on one kind of sex that they like, whatever. I really like the surprise. It's an important part of my creativity. We're living in very repressed times, so I guess I'm like being a little bit of a dick, being like, sex isn't a ritual, but at least not for me. But it's like, these times are very against it. And I don't mean like the disgusting carceral, horrible idea of sex that a lot of the culture seems to have. But I mean like discovery and surprise and surrender and humor. It's very, very important for my creative life to have that kind of connection, friendship, laughter. You know, I could talk about, because it's very socially acceptable now to talk about my tarot cards, my meditation practice, the diet that I keep, my vitamins, my sleep style, or whatever, like, you know what I mean? It's just like everyone is like out there selling that shit, right? Like I could just sell you my supplements right now, tell you which tarot deck is the good deck. But I actually think it's important to say, like, there were many things for me that were positive about the experience of a lot of normal life going away over the last few years, having never been particularly comfortable with normal life, and also being forced to stop traveling, which was wonderful for my health. But I mean, being on the planet Earth, having new and unexpected experiences, going on walks, having long conversations, having sex with new people, it's a really important part of my practice. And then that may seem like duh, like those are just the things of life, but at every turn we're like being distracted from the things of life. So those aren't rituals. But they're important to me. So thank you for your question. Sorry for being a bitch. Wouldn't it be funny if they could only see the corn in my teeth on the internet?
The microphone is a camera. Something that in what you read, and in other things I've read of yours, struck me again, which is the kind of collision of what's called the sapiosexual, right? This kind of incredible turn on of wisdom, right? And
I like retarded people.
what? Wait,
Sorry, I know that word is like not okay. I'm from Massachusetts.
This is the second part of the
Okay,
question. So, because it happened in that poem you read, but
Sorry.
also then the eros of stupidity, right? Like the incredible, inarticulate eros of stupidity versus the easy and mellifluous, like eroticism of like wisdom and beauty and like learning.
Sorry, I messed up your question, Matthias.
Was that a question?
It was a comment.
What was a comment? Yeah, well.
What they used to call an intervention.
But I want to sort of talk about that eros of stupidity, and it's like what I think you do really well is you get it into language, you get it on the page, and it's very hard to do that.
Oh, thank you.
And one of my question, I suppose, is like, how do you do the translation? Like, how does it get there?
I don't know, man. I think, okay, I'm gonna quote two people who don't go together. So I think Iggy Pop says, like, he says this a lot, but he's like, you basically like can't have rock and roll unless it's like fucking retarded. Like there has to be this element of like boneheaded, idiotic stupidity in it, or it's just pretentious and horrible. And I think that's really true. And he is such as like a deeply sophisticated, like brilliant person. Like he's not, but he's able to access that in himself. He's able to access this like primal, genuine idiot, and especially like the guys in the Stooges were like way more extreme idiot than him, but like that's how they were able to like harness this. He's talked about this a lot. This is, whatever is like in the archive. So what I'm saying is like not controversial. This is like settled history. And like, but I just think it's really true. And he articulates it so beautifully, and he's so not that. Like he's like very sophisticated, brilliant, sensitive guy. And I just love so much how human beings can be so incredibly intelligent and eloquent without being culturally sophisticated or whatever. And I just like am so fascinated by people whose minds are different from mine, and I find that so attractive. So I like hate the word sapiosexual, and I think I am not. I'm like the opposite of that. I'm like retardosexual or whatever. I'm sorry you guys hate that word because you're whatever. You're all better people than me. But I find it incredibly beautiful. Like I think there's something deeply eloquent and beautiful in different kinds of minds, and I don't think it's actually like, I think it's not a joke. Like the thing is, like, I don't actually think it's retarded. Like I actually find like a lot of the people I've been very close to and felt most seen by are not people who like go to art school, like. And maybe some of you in this room know what I'm talking about. I think I have often felt like very misunderstood and very unseen in some of the most sophisticated places. And I feel like people make assumptions about me or about my experience. And there's a kind of like compassion and understanding and grace that doesn't need to be like asked for or something like that I find like, and so I'm just like endlessly fascinated by people whose brains don't work like the way that mine does. And I'm so grateful to hear that you find that makes its way into the work, because the other person that I was gonna quote, who doesn't go, although maybe like it's like funny, like maybe they're literally in bed together right now, but like Jory Graham says, people in this room don't necessarily know of her, but she's a great and important poet and a very, very brilliant thinker of the art of poetry. And she teaches at Harvard. And Jory says, I barely know her, but we did go to dinner one time, and she said all this stuff to me at dinner. And she said, people don't write who they are, they write what they want. Like, they write what they're trying to move toward. And I thought that was really interesting. I'd never thought that before. And of course, it's like a very useful, I don't know if it applies in like the other arts, maybe not, like it's like a useful thing to think about. But so if you find that I'm able to articulate that in my writing, it has to do with the fact that I'm attracted to it and I lust after it. So I'm happy that you find it to be there. Yeah.
I have another question from the chat. I heard a sand book on audio before I read the text. Can you say more on choices on performing voice, delivery, pace, tone, how you manage recording of 360 pages, etc.?
Thank you for that awesome question. I hope you liked the audiobook. I guess if you bothered to read the book after, like maybe you liked it a little bit. That experience of recording the audiobook was really cool. It was done during the pandemic in Boston, and so it was really cool because I was like going back to like my like teenage stomping ground or whatever, and reading the whole book aloud was like an overwhelmingly cool experience, and I kind of felt like it was a better book aloud than it was on paper. I should say at the time I was so like high off myself. I was like, it's an even better book. And it was like very cathartic. The sound engineer was like blown away. Like he was like, because like normally they don't have poets doing audiobooks, so he had mostly had like voiceover actors, you know what I mean? And like because in poetry we have this tradition of performance. So I've read a lot, like I read like a shitload, like all over the world over 7 years. I read all of those poems, like a ton. So when it came to actually doing an audiobook, it really was like a whatever, I don't know how long it was, like a 5-hour marathon performance. And it was like super emotionally satisfying. And the sound guy was like, damn. So I would say like I really hope you liked it. I hope it didn't feel overdone. But you know, if it sucked, like I'll try to do better next time. Is that a hand? Hi.
Do you ever make music?
Oh my God, what an amazing question. I'm gonna try not to pee myself. I used to have a small musical gift, just a little one. And I was raised in classical music and dance. And something happened to me when I was 18 that like forced me very deep into literature. I was like shoved violently into literature. I was pushed so deep into it that I was like embossed, you know? And then I had this experience with music and singing and like musical ability where it would only come to me in like really extreme moments, and I would get like suddenly good. And for a period of time when I was into drugs, I could never understand the guitar, but like for a little while I had a cocaine habit where I would just get really blazed and then get like really good at guitar, like because I could like numb the pain in my fingers. But like I don't do drugs anymore, so I'm like I don't have the calluses anymore. I don't know. I'm sorry for like giving you this long answer, but I basically like my little tiny, like I feel like people with a real musical gift, it's with them always, but for me it's like this like angel that only visits me sometimes, and I have to be in a certain kind of like groovy happiness in order for that gift to smile on me. And the reason why I'm taking so long with your question is because I do feel as though I've paid my ransom to literature at last, and that I may allow myself to be happy enough for music to live with me more consistently in times to come. Thank you. Yes.
I have another question from the chat. How were you shoved into literature?
The chat is like, I'm sorry, are you like the Marquis de Sade in like a Shrek costume? Who are you?
The question continues. Did you resist that? Which particular branch of literature were you propelled towards?
I mean, class, what branch of literature? Sorry. I'm a poet, sadist in the chat. My name's Ariana, and I'm a fucking poet. That's the kind of literature I make. Television. My mother became homeless when I was 18. I was a sophomore in college. She and my brother came to live in my dorm room in the spring semester of my sophomore year of college. And I had been a lazy student up until that time. I was very attracted to writing. I loved all of the arts, but I think that I probably would have been like a happy, like hippie-ish dilettante, like maybe like a dancer type. I don't know, like a nice like artsy girl, but like not like an artist, you know? And like who knows what I could have, I don't know what might have become of me, but that experience did something to my psyche, and I became like super brilliant, like really fast, and it was only under duress. Like I think I'm like naturally like a very like happy lazy person or something. I don't mean to say that like happy people are all lazy. I just mean like my happiness, and it like caused this like weird like mutation in my soul, heart, body, and psyche, where I became like hyper acute. It like crystallized something, and like I found that like where my soul went was deep into language, like deep in, and I had this experience of language that was much more profound than like the kind of like surface attraction I had felt toward it. Like I felt attraction to all forms of beauty as a youth, you know what I mean? Like I liked colors and I liked sounds and like whatever, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't that, but it was kind of like a psychedelic experience of like trauma and shock and disorientation that suddenly like the realm of language became very alive and like very rich, and its like medicinal and conjuring properties got really alive to me, and I literally was like shoved into it, and then it like went hard into me. I don't know, I'm not explaining that well, but that's how it felt. Are you satisfied, chat person?
I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. What was that?
I said the therapy session now.
It's a therapy session now?
Tell me about your mother.
Yeah.
One last question before we adjourn to have our
They responded with, "Thank you for that amazing answer."
Aw.
Smiley cat with heart eyes emoji.
Oh, great. I'm so glad.
That's my emoji.
Heart eyes emoji. Was that you, Matthias? Are you like secretly? Yes.
I was wondering if you could talk about your translation work and if like the interest in translation grew out of that theme, sort of like diving into language.
That's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
also, have you ever written in, do you write in other languages?
It's a great question. I should also say, like, if it's okay with you, we can do a few more questions in this space.
Yeah.
Like, it's weirdly easier for me than like the I don't know.
Mopsy.
The like I haven't slept in a couple weeks, so I'm like I have this podium to like lean on. So I'm happy to keep doing this for a bit if you guys want. So okay, beautiful question. My interest in translation initially was that like a lot of the poets that I admire have done it. Baudelaire translated Poe, and who else? And yeah, Poe, most famously. But like, it was like this, and Lydia Davis's translations I admired so much, and I felt like it made her mind really acute. And so people I admired did it, so I thought, okay, that's a cool reason to do it. And then I learned French from a young age, but I kind of never got perfect at it for various reasons. But because I learned it young, it was this connection that I had to my mother. It was a gift that she had given me, that language. So it's this part of my psyche that is like a lot sweeter. Like when I'm speaking French, I'm like a sweeter person. And so translation was a way for me to maintain a relationship with that part of me. I don't think I'm a very good translator, but it's a wonderful education. However, I probably will never do it again because I did a kind of a shitload of it when I was pretty young, and it's really bad money, really bad. And the thing is, if you are ambitious about writing, if you get really good. Like translators are so deep in the like integumental mechanics of the magic of a text that like I have a friend in Argentina. She's like one of the greatest poets of Argentina, Cecilia Pavone, and she translates such great writers from North America and whatever from the English language, and I just know it makes her an incredible writer. So I think it's a beautiful, weird art form. I used to say, like, while I was doing it, I was like, it's like doing ecstasy, but not fun. Like, it like fries your brain, but like it would really fry my brain. Like I would remember when I was translating those books, and like I would just be like so like just drained and stupid by the end of the day. Like I had nothing left, and that's why I was just like, I can't do this because it's so much work to do it well, and it fries your brain like ecstasy without the fun, and it's not a lot of money. So, but it taught me a lot, I hope. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned something about how the book could have different structures. Could you talk a little bit about how the structure came about and how you chose the one that it's in?
So the rose really doesn't have a structure yet.
Okay.
It's still like I shuffle it around. I read it in different ways. Oh, how I came to the.
Yeah, but it has a title, I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
That points somewhere, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it will have a structure, but I haven't settled on it yet. There's a whole section of the book that I haven't written yet about magicians who lost their power. I'm really, really interested in like the risks, like the risks of love, and like there's like if you think about, so I was really interested. I began working on this 25-hour performance piece that I did over the summer called Divine Justice that was based on Medea. And I was thinking about the Medea story as like, I wanted to interpret that story as the story of a magician who lost her power. Because I don't think it's ever been interpreted that way. But one way you could understand the story of Medea is she's like the priestess daughter of the king of Colchis, and Jason and the Argonauts come, and she decides to put all her power into this guy, and she gives him everything. She kills her own brother. She like takes the most sacred object of her culture and like gives it to him and like fucks him and like goes back and has children with him, and then he dishes her, and basically she made the mistake of investing her power incorrectly, putting her power into the wrong thing. And so I became really interested in like the erotic idea of like the erotics of great magicians who lose their power. And another famous one is John Dee, the great astrologer of Elizabethan England. And it could be argued that his, like, it wasn't strictly like by erotic like misdirection that he lost his power, but it was more like Faustian desire to like know and control everything that drove him nuts. But basically like this like dude with no ears like showed up like with a black mirror, and like they like went crazy and like ended up like having to like run away from the king of Bohemia or the Elector Palatinate. Anyway, it's like a whole long thing, but like that's like a true story of like a magician who just like went nuts. And then there's the kind of myths around Merlin, the Merlin story, and the way that Merlin was, I'm trying to remember the word that they use in like Geoffrey of Monmouth or something, that Merlin was seduced away from Avalon by Morgan Le Fay. So for Merlin, it was an erotic distraction. But so there's a whole section in The Rose that like, I'm just interested in, I'm interested in the way that like that adoring or like loving gaze can be like an enrapturing or an intoxication, that like that there is real danger in love, I think. And I find that danger fascinating. And like anyone who's ever had like an exhausting love affair or a draining experience with love, and I pray that that's not the only experience of love that you ever have or whatever, but like it's a fascinating experience to be drained, and it's a bizarre thing to want, but sometimes you want it, you know? Some of you are nodding like, yeah. You don't always want it, but sometimes you really do. And then like once you've poured it all out, how do you get your juice back? I just like, and that question is ultimately a question of magic and magic serums and secret potions, and right? It's like, but it also has to do with like, well, what is the sacred energy in us that we pour forth when we're in a state of adoring and a state of devotion? And are we pouring that forth to God? Are we only like worshiping at the altar of our own narcissism, or are we really connecting? So those are some of the obsessions that remain unstructured as a yet in the book. I think it may be my last book. I think I'm like I said, like I just feel like I think I'm gonna like retire from poetry. Yes.
So a question from the chat. I've been writing for a while, and when I stop, there's like constant guilt and pressure to do more. When and how do you know you've paid your dues, and what does it feel like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, well, everybody's different. I understand that guilty feeling is kind of shitty because we live in like a culture that's like, if you're not being productive, you're not living, and I don't agree with that. And I personally, I'm a Scorpio. Like I really like to build up a lot of, I like how you guys are laughing. I have to build up longing and anxiety. That's very productive to me in terms of like writing well. So wait, what's going on? You all are like, me too? No? You same, okay. So you can't say me too anymore. I was totally like, you all are me tooing me. I've never met these people before. Yeah, no, I think it's really good to build up desire, actually. I find that really productive. And there's also times that I'm like changing spiritually so much that I become very superstitious about writing because I don't want to write down, I don't want to fix the wrong, like if I'm in a state of transformation, which I feel like I often am, like I sometimes don't want to write in the midst of that because it just feels like it's gonna not be right and I just don't want to halt the process, if that makes sense. It's like I'm in the chemical reaction. So I would say to you, person in the chat, like try to be like gentle and loving to yourself and not just like be beating yourself up if you're not meeting like what feels like your quota. But at the same time, there is that dirty, like if you are a writer, you do feel like almost like dirty or gross, like you haven't brushed your teeth or showered or something when like it's been a while, but you build up like a spunk and you get like anxious and you just feel off or something, and you're almost cranky. And I think that like that's part of the thing anyway. So, and it's true, like sometimes you're like, I don't know how to even write a poem, or it's like been so long since I've written a good one, and then like you write a really good one, and you're like, yeah, I'm back. So I'm putting some love around that experience. And for me, the feeling of having so this is like I have to be a little bit, if you'll permit me, like a moment of self-seriousness. Like my last book, A Sandbook, took me 7 years to write. That book, A Sandbook, Mercury, Coeur de Lion, and my first book, The Cow, and the play I wrote, Telephone, like for me, those constitute like a pretty complete statement. I think that they unfortunately haven't like aged. Like I think that they remain pretty culturally relevant. Like I may be dumb and old, maybe I'm wrong, but like I'm like old enough. Like my first book was 2000, came out in 2006, and I'm able to like recognize that the concerns that were obsessing me were not incorrect. And like the way, like I couldn't imagine the way the culture would move, but I feel like I can recognize in the work that I devoted my life to doing, I can recognize in it a seriousness and a justice. Like I think that my concerns, even when I was like a completely fucked up youth, were like not the wrong concerns, and I feel respectful of the monument that work represents. But I wouldn't feel that way easily. Like it took a lot of doing for me to be able to say that. It's not to say that I'm satisfied with myself or that I feel that I've expressed everything that I would wish to express as an artist, only that it may be that my life can become a bit easier now, and I can express myself in other ways. Maybe that's a good place to stop. Thank you guys all so much.
Oh, well, yeah.